Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let's continue. I'd like to share with you the following. For some people, technology has become quite addictive. And when I say addiction, I don't mean that metaphorically. Addiction like people are addicted to heroin or cocaine. Now, I understand that not everybody has this problem with technology. In fact, it's only a very small minority of the people who actually have serious problems. But for those minority of people, it can really ruin their lives. And that besides this minority of people who are really have difficult challenges with this, so technology affects in a negative way a good portion of society. Apparently some 50% at least of the divorces that occur currently have some element of technological excess in the behavior of one of the or both of the parties. So technology does not affect everybody in the same way. If it has affected you in a negative, Allah bless you. But there are some vulnerable individuals who it profoundly affects in a negative way, and it can ruin their lives. This is being gradually being recognized. There are some terms that have been suggested. Internet addiction disorder, or more euphemistically, because people don't like to hear the word addiction. Problematic internet use, compulsive internet use. This is not. This has not captured the mainstream medical attention yet. But we have our own criterion for assessing things. The Quran, Sunnah, we have our own criterion of what's right and what's wrong. Let's consider. So there are some signs of addiction, and these are very similar to signs of addiction to other problems, phenomena, alcohol and drug abuse, etc. So person when they have mood swings and withdrawal symptoms when they don't have their access to technology, and people lose their phone and it's like they have a panic attack. Or if you tell a child, no, you cannot go online for a certain period of time, the child explodes and it's out of control. It's a sign of addictive behavior. It's a sign of it. And there's preoccupation and excessive time spent in addictive activities. Person spends an inordinate amount of time online, for example. There's loss of control. There's need for more time or new game or new novelties to satisfy the individual. And there's social withdrawal. I mean, people, it's really amazing. People are so attracted to technology. They don't pay attention to families. One time I'm bowling, and then their family's bowling, but the father is on the playing with his phone. Really? So people rather be with their toys. Now, I don't mind. Don't take that lightly. This technology is very powerful because it gives immediate gratification, positive feedback to the person that's using. It's very powerful. And it can separate husband and wife because they find the internet more engaging than their spouse. Be careful. And also as a result of this, they have academic and work consequences. Right? The time spent online is directly related to a student's GPA. I should say inversely related. The more time they spend, the lower the GPA. So, technology can be oppressive. You have to understand. But there are different ways to oppress people. So, there's one way, the traditional way, human beings have caused mischief, is by force. You can oppress people by force. Men can be changed, they can be tortured, they can be killed. Their books can be burned, their heritage erased, their truth is concealed, depriving them of knowledge that could set them free. Those are fancy-sounding words, but let me share with you. What's the big deal about books being burned and the heritage being erased? What's the big deal with that? How is that oppressive? And what's the big deal? Who cares about old books and history anyways? Somebody might say. But there's a story. In 1943, 1940s, there was a famine in Bengal, in the eastern part east of India. There was a famine in Bengal. Don't quote me on this, but conservative estimates suggest that maybe about 2 million poor people died from that famine. Starvation and disease, 2 million plus. Those are conservative estimates. So Gandhiji was in and out of jail at that time because of fighting for the independence. The British put him in jail. When Gandhiji got out of jail, he went to go visit Bengal, this poor area where people were dying by millions. People would see dead bodies on the street. But the reporters and Gandhiji noted that very peculiar phenomenon. Very peculiar phenomenon. There was no looting. People don't go and steal from the stores. Why wouldn't they do that? The stores were filled with head stuff, but the prices were so inflated, nobody could buy stuff. Their stores, by the time they were so desperate they would go steal something, they had no energy to do so. There's stories of little kids, skeleton kids, you can imagine an Indian little skeleton kid going up there trying to grab bread from the counter from the store, and the store owner would just slap him in the face and the kid would die. But they would not steal in that society for those. There was no looting there. Why? Why was there no looting? There was no looting because in that culture, in the society, they considered it disrespectful, is dishonorable, disgraceful to steal bread. They would rather die than steal food. It was not part of the value system. Now, mind you, if that was your heritage, if those were your grandparents, and that's how your grandparents behaved, you would think twice about how your own behavior. So it's important for people to know their heritage, where they come from, what their values are. It gives them certain parameters of behavior. Hey, this is what was expected of us from before. This is how they did. These are the sacrifices that people made, so we're here today. That's why books are important. That's why reading is important. I should share you a story about reading. Frederick Douglass, Frederick Douglass lived the time of, Henry David Thoreau's time. Right, Frederick Douglass is an African slave in America who freed himself from his master. Had a terrible slave childhood. He freed himself eventually from it. But when he was a slave as a child, his master's wife was a kinder lady, and she was trying to teach Frederick Douglass the ABCs to write and read. And the master one day found out that he was being taught. And he was very angry. He said, don't teach this child to read. He'll get ideas. So he forbid that Frederick Douglass would be taught. And Frederick Douglass, however, said to himself, boy, I have to learn to read, he said to himself. Because he said, his autobiography is very beautiful. What I like about his autobiography is that there's no hatred in it. There's no malice in it. He's like, it's really quite amazing. He was quite a guy. It's worth reading. It's a beautiful book. He says he has to learn to read. Why? He knew that his master was speaking the truth, that there's something about reading that will help him, that will help him free. And he said he knew that to be true because of the conviction in the voice of his master. So Frederick Douglass learned to read. How? You know what he would do? And he would say he was so poorly treated. Now, in the wintertime, his feet would bleed from the cold and sores that would have in his feet. He would sleep in rice bags in the kitchen, in the rice bags. That's where he would sleep. But then when any time he would get a piece of paper that would have something written on it, he would try to learn it. And in summertime, the kids would throw away the books. He would grab them and write in the corners of the books that are left over. But he would learn to read, and he became one of the greatest writers of that generation. You should really read his autobiography. That's what reading does to you. So, nevertheless, one way to oppress people is by force. People can be controlled by inflicting pain. That's what happened to Frederick Douglass until he freed himself. But then there's another way to oppress people. There's another way to oppress people, and that is to create addiction in people. Listen carefully. Another way to oppress people is to create addiction to things. So they become oblivious to everything else. You deprive people of their autonomy. They don't think for themselves anymore. You distract people by trivialities. So another way to oppress people is by depriving them of their autonomy, distracting them with trivialities. There will be no reason to ban books because nobody would want to read them. Why ban books? Because nobody reads them. And you numb people to passivity. There's so much information. Everybody says, "Oh my God, this world is so messed up. What can I do for it?" There's so much. People become numb. They become passive. There's no motivation to do anything because there's so much information. Truth is drowned in a sea of irrelevance. People become slaves of their culture, of the absurdities they love. People become slaves of the absurdities that they love. Voltaire seemed to have said something to the effect, it's difficult to free fools from the chains they revere. How are you going to free somebody from something that they love? So people can be controlled by inflicting pleasure, by giving them so much pleasure. It becomes a form of oppression. So technology can be very addictive to some people. In fact, I like to suggest to you, even if it's only to make you think, men have become slaves of their tools. Now, to make my point, there's a gentleman named Orlando Patterson, who is an expert on slavery history. And he studied all known slave societies. And he wrote this book. And he said there are three characteristics of slave societies. Number one, slave's destiny is in the master's domination. Number two, slave is socially shunned and meets social death. Number three, slave has perpetual dishonor. So I leave you to think. Now, the second part of this talk, first part was how technology affects the society. And the second part of my talk is how family structure changes have helped technology's hold on society. Inshallah, we shall continue after a brief pause. Until then, as-salatu was-salamu ala rasulillah, alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum.